Hey everybody, this is Brian Yellow. Episode number 31. Blair Reeves is a volunteer for the Peace Corps, powerlifter, hiker of backcountry trails, explorer of countries that intimidate me. He's been all over the place. Thought to be a dad. Had the same experience I did, actually. Quite interesting. Wife got pregnant, he got motivated. He's written 2 books, one for product management and the other a science fiction novel. He does a better job explaining it, and I'm going to let him do that. It was a really good conversation. He is a very personable guy. He said a lot of good things about writing in general in terms of just doing it, and I think that was very apt. But what I enjoyed the most about this conversation is that, here's a guy that comes from Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, and he's been all over the place. He's experiencing life. He's not letting life experience him. He's doing the things that he wants to do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with the life that's in front of him. He was a great guy to meet, and I like that. Contact information is going to be in the notes, of course. He's got a website, he's got Twitter information, all that good stuff. So, and no further ado, this is Blair Reeves.
I'm a product manager, so I work in software.
Product manager.
Yeah, so I from a technical and business perspective, I own a couple of different products that my company sells.
That's fantastic, and you're writing a book about that too.
I should say I've
Written.
along with a buddy of mine, Ben Gaines, we wrote the book about that, and it's actually O'Reilly is considering publishing it right now, and we had always planned on just self-publishing it on Amazon, and then they got wind of it, and so now we do some other stuff with O'Reilly. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're the ones the cute animals on the on the covers and the so we wrote the thing, and makeitsobook.com, and we'll see.
When I saw that, I was like, well, I mean, you're an interesting guy, because I'm looking at your website going, okay, he wrote a science fiction novel. Oh, okay, he was in the piece. Okay, he wrote a product management book. Okay, he's a power lifter. Oh, he offers booze to his employees.
I don't.
What else does this guy do?
But so my co-author, actually Ben, he's a Mormon, so his vice of choice is ice cream, which is a good call on his part. So we kind of are the yin and yang of software product management.
So being a product manager, does that help you as an author, as a science fiction author? Does that motivate you at all? How does that come into play when you're doing your science fiction authoring?
So it's a good question. I think that there's a lot of people who work in technology, software, and like a lot of other fields
there are a lot of people that do that type of work that envision themselves to be a science fiction author. And in fact, just to throw the name of your product management book out, it's Make It So, which is the famous quote from Star Trek.
we include. I'm not sure if you look at the site. There's actually, I put a page on there just to make sure that people who are not Trekkies could understand why we put that, and we put a little YouTube link in there just to make it clear, because I think that for people who are not in my particular generational cohort, younger, older, whatever, they might not completely get that, or if they're not into Star Trek, and so I recognize I'm kind of limiting my audience here a little bit, but
well, I'm pretty sure that if they're reading science fiction and they don't get that, they need to be educated.
That's certainly true. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of people working in tech software, whatever, who do this, and obviously maybe there's some sort of sci-fi kind of bent to them. I also think there's some people who just look for a creative outlet, and some people get that in some ways, and in other ways, and whatever. And this is one of mine, so I gave it a shot.
How long have you been writing?
Man, like we were talking about high school football right before we started broadcasting. I started writing creatively back in high school, or even middle school, I guess. But I didn't do it for like almost a decade, and I didn't really write anything. I didn't really do anything with it because how do you? It's impossible to make living as a writer, right? Or
Yeah.
it's really hard, right? And
Oh, it's impossible now. I mean, there's 3,500 new books published every single day. And I
yeah,
did the math. No, I didn't do the math because I got my degree in English, so that's impossible. I just figured 3,500 books published every single day since 3 months ago when I published mine. That's just astronomical to think how many books are over mine right now.
yeah, yeah. I actually I read something just the other day. So many of the great authors in history were not writers, right? They did other stuff, and like writing was kind of like their outlet, right? So like Kurt Vonnegut, man, he was a car salesman for a while.
He
Like,
worked up in Westchester, GE's chemical lab as something, something, something or another. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was a
Not
lot.
Kurt Vonnegut, but Bukowski was a drunk.
Yeah. Well, then you get the whole, people who live, lives full of pain and hardship are produce the best writers.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I've been able to avoid that. But people who,
I mean, you were in the Peace Corps, bro, and you gave back. That's pretty impressive.
but like I feel like having some other kind of like life outside of writing is super super important, and nothing against the MFAs out there, but because you certainly learn to write, and it's probably a good way of doing it. I just think that there's a lot of folks out there who don't try it because they think like, oh well, I didn't study creative writing or whatever, and it is true, it is a learned skill, and I have not learned it as far as anyone has, but I think more of the people should give it a shot. So I did.
Well, let's go back a little bit. You said you started writing in high school, and you've been writing. When did you start back up?
Yeah. So I didn't really. I wrote some stuff in the Peace Corps. I didn't really do anything with it. I did a blog for a little while, but that was kind of like on like.
Was it a fiction blog or?
No. It was more like businessy stuff. It was boring stuff, but it was like stuff that was kind of interesting to me. It wasn't fiction, and I didn't really do.
So I mean, what happened that said, here I'm going to pump out 271 pages of prose and write a science fiction novel?
So fun fact: when you write in Google Docs, it seems a lot shorter. I feel like the Google Doc version of the Second Transit, I think, was like under 100 pages, something like that. Like it was not. I didn't even realize I was writing this thing, to be so long. And then I formatted it into ebook format, and Jesus Christ, it turned out to be 270 pages or something like that.
So when did you write up with like 12,000 words or something like that?
No, oh goodness, it was 90,000 words.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and I didn't realize it for the longest time. I just opened the Google Drive doc. I guess a little longer than that, but it's I guess a little longer. But I wrote it in pieces. So there's 10 parts of the book, and I wrote each one separately. I hid them in separate docs. So I didn't even realize until maybe a month or two ago how long this thing was. And I didn't really know what word counts to shoot for, what I needed to get to, what I should avoid, or whatever. And it turns out that 90,000 words is pretty much a sweet spot.
No, that is a sweet spot. That's on the opposite. That's like on the top end of sweet spots for first novels. It's really good. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, and that's so good news, right? So I didn't write anything about that for quite a while. I wrote I don't, not even op-ed pieces, but sort of stuff like tech and policy and society and stuff like that. But then I guess about 2 years ago, one of my best friends, a guy named Brian, went to high school together, went to college together, great dude. We went out we did an annual backpacking trip together. So we did Glacier one year. We did the Boundary Waters National Area in wilderness area in northern Minnesota. We did Smokies and some other stuff. And that year we did Zion. So you can trek across Zion National Park from west to east. It's called this Cross Zion Trek, and it takes you 4 or 5 days at least. And it's a situation where I'm a pretty avid backpacker, outdoors guy, but I'd never really had any experience in the desert, so we had to really figure out where all our water spots are and stuff like that. But it's amazing stuff. For a guy who grew up in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, totally different geography, totally different topography and sites and everything else. Anyway, so we were. I'm not sure what the audience your show here is, but we were taking part in some certain pharmaceuticals on the one night around the campfire. Looking over this beautiful canyon, and
What kind of pharmaceuticals?
oh,
The medicinal type that just became legalized in like 3 or 4 different states, the smokable kind? Okay,
yeah,
okay.
that kind. Yeah,
Or the more shroomy kinds that.
no, nothing really extraordinary. No,
Oh, okay.
but and one of the things I had problems with writing with fiction was that I just didn't have any good ideas. I've read a lot. I read a lot of fiction. I read a lot generally, and I always felt like I didn't have any good ideas. If I had a good idea to write about, I'd love to write about it. But if I didn't, I would just feel like the creative juices just don't flow. And I got inspired throughout our trip in Zion. I don't know how it came to me or whatever, but I got this idea for what would happen, if there was like a giant gravitational mass. And originally I thought of like a gas giant, but then I realized that'd be impossible to form like physically. But if there was something like that,
Yeah, what about the radiation?
Yeah, well, then I came to that too, and then I realized it'd be baked as a planet before anything happened. But as I went through this whole thing, what would have a big giant gravitational mass came really close to a planet with like people on it once every sort of an increment of time. And if that was, I started thinking about it, if it was 10,000 years, well, gosh, that would really be tough to do, because then you could have the entire span of human civilization and then quite a bit more, and never interact with it. If it came every like 100 years, that would really kind of it would probably screw up evolution on the planet and all this stuff. So I started thinking about different increments of time and how that would impact a society of intelligent life that evolved on this planet. And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, heck, that would impact your political systems, your religious systems, your language, I mean, everything that happened. And the more I thought about it, I just couldn't shake it. I thought it was a really interesting idea. And I started thinking about it, but I thought I hadn't written anything in a long time, so forget about it. But I didn't forget about it. I couldn't shake it for like 6, 7, 8 months or something. I just kept like chewing on this in the back of my head. And until one day I was like, well, screw it. I'm just going to, write the first, what would the first installment of this thing look like? So I started outlining it, and I started writing it. And I wrote one, and I wrote the next one. And then I had all these ideas for what these parts would look like. And have you ever read, there's a great book by Kim Stanley Robinson called The Years of Rice and Salt.
No, I haven't read that. Years of Rice and Salt.
The Years of Rice and Salt. It's really extraordinary. I'm a big KSR fan generally, but like this is one of his better ones, I think. And Years of Rice and Salt is a historical fiction book about what would happen if the bubonic plague had not killed a third of Europe, but it actually killed 99.9% of Europe. And in the Middle Ages, before the Renaissance, before the Enlightenment, all this other stuff happened. And what happens is like the Chinese Empire and the Mongols and the Islamic Empire, they basically take over. The Iroquois turn into a force. Like
I love
Japanese,
stuff like that. I would love to write something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very KSR. It's very like techno historical, and it. In the narrative structure is that it's based into different ages of human history, told through the perspective of these two kind of souls. They're sort of linked in this kind of Buddhist idea that they kind of go into. And I thought it was a super cool book, and I thought it was a really cool structure. And I started thinking of that kind of structure for my idea.
So you're an avid reader. You read all the time. You've exercised this story muscle of yours. I mean, that people like me who write all the time, like every day they wake up and they go boom, 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 boom on a keyboard. You're exercising it with books, constant reading.
I mean, I try to. I mean, I don't want to overstate it or nothing. I mean, I'm, I try to read wherever I can. I got a wife and 2 dogs and a busy job and all sorts of stuff going on at home. So But
you're on the train every single day and you've got a book open.
Oh, I don't.
You got something on your Kindle.
I don't even take the train, man. I walk to work. So we live on the Upper East Side. I work in Midtown. So I consume a lot of podcasts.
I'm in Dimas Park.
Yeah. So I thought about that structure. I thought about how it would work here. So it took me maybe a year and a half, and I didn't work on it consistently. I tried to hack away at it until the creative juices were.
What was your writing schedule like? What's your idea of consistency? I mean, I know you said you're a power lifter, and somebody like that would be doing something every single day. You have something that you're going to do in the gym, something you're going to be working on, something that you're motivated to do. What would be your writing schedule?
Yeah, dude, I tried that. I tried doing like, I'm gonna write 1,000 words a day or whatever, or a page or what. And my issue was, when I tried that, it was like pulling teeth. I would tell you, writing is not easy for me. When I try to write and I really have to like bear down on it, it's the end product is not great. So I'd write it, and then I would like look at, I look back at like the two or three paragraphs I just wrote, and I'm like, this is garbage, right?
What'd you do with it?
I've deleted it.
Why? Oh, that's the wrong answer. You should you could keep it and come back to it and go, okay, why is this garbage? Edit.
Well, it's like
don't delete it.
It's like Hemingway said, like, write drunk, edit sober, right? And that's probably what I should have done.
Exactly, edit. You should have, yeah, exactly. Keep it, and then you go back. I mean, once you have it on paper, that's the hardest part. Not to give you advice because you wrote a novel. Congratulations. That's like impressive. That's running a marathon.
I need all the advice I can get, man. I mean, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, and
I mean, you say you delete it. It's like going into a nursery and just like mowing down babies instead of like nursing them into adulthood. You're
I know people
murdering them before they got a chance.
I know people who prefer writing longhand, and that's one of the reasons why. Because when you write on a computer, two clicks of a button and all of your work is gone.
Done.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you write longhand, that isn't necessarily the case. But what I found really worked for me was when I had, a night, or I had even like an hour, and I could like, it's sort of like writing code. If you've ever done that, like if you get into the mindset.
Unfortunately, my brain does not work that way.
Oh, I'm sure.
If-thans are just like if-thans do not work for me at all. I mean, I can start it out. I can get like to a certain point, and then I just get lost in it. I can't make my brain comprehend more than like 3 or 4 things at a time.
Yeah, people think that. I think if you tried it, I mean, it's one of those things though. Once you get into the mindset, once you like kind of shut out those other distractions, and you really focus in, and you turn your phone off, and you turn off Twitter, whatever, you really zone in on it. Then you can start to focus, and then that's when I would. So most of my writing was probably done in like 2, 3, 4 page blocks, and I would
I gotcha.
Yeah, and I just knock those out, and I'd stand back and be like, "Oh, I'm pretty happy with that." I'd come back later, I'd edit it, obviously, I'd do some other stuff. But that's bigger blocks rather than consistently every day doing stuff really worked a lot better for me. And then what really got me going in probably the last half of the book was my wife got pregnant in January. So,
oh wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And so I was like, look, I
gotta tell you this. When my wife got pregnant, I had been very novel starting oriented. I had started like 5 or 6 novels. I was very good at getting up to 20,000, 30,000 words. I had like 5 or 6 novels to that point. I was a very short story oriented writer. I love short stories. I also love starting novels. And as soon as my wife got pregnant, I got very motivated to finish this novel, the one that's published on Amazon.
Yeah.
I finished it before she got pregnant, before we gave birth to the twins.
Yeah, man, it's a focus mechanism.
It's very focus oriented. It's like, oh, I'm having babies. She's finishing something. I finish something. I was like, wow, let's get pregnant again.
I set out at the beginning of the year. She got pregnant, and I set out for myself. I'm like, all right, this I'm gonna like do like 2, maybe 3 goals this year, and then baby comes, and I won't be able to do anything. Maybe I will, but we'll see.
No, you will.
In a couple of months,
it does change your life, man. Being a father, what you were before, I'll call you a douchebag. I don't know what you were. You were hiking mountains and being in the Peace Corps, but the douchebag you were before is not the person you'll be when those babies are here. Yeah. I mean, you're just totally different, man.
I'm totally looking forward to it too. I really, really am. But I knew that like at a minimum, I'm going in a baby black hole for a few months, right?
Yeah, you are.
And I'm not working on a book. I'm not doing this thing or the other. So I set out a couple of goals.
You'll try to be the same person, but you're week barely cooked spaghetti breaking while you're trying to do it. I don't know what you'll be, but that's how I was, man. I'm trying my hardest to be the same dude, and like, it's just not happening.
Yeah,
I
no,
am morphing into this, person. Like, I'll be a dad, but there's nothing really to dad. You know what I mean? They're barely. You're cleaning bottles. You're looking at your mom. Your mom. You're looking at your wife producing food for living things. You're like, oh, can I do anything?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
take the baby genie bag out. Okay.
Yeah, no, I realized really early on that, like, no, my body can do nothing nearly as cool as what my wife is doing right now.
That's why we're all strong and got muscles and walk the dog, push the stroller, and that's what we're here for, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so she had this. I set a couple of goals for the year. I'm like, I'm going to do this before the baby comes in. And number one on there was I'm going to finish this damn book. And I'm gonna. And it doesn't have to be well written, but it just has to be written, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the goal. So like I looked into like you can get it like edited. You can get it like like either like actually edited or just edited in the sort of like, is this worth like pursuing kind of way. There's lots of different kind of services out there, but I had never had any illusions that one, this would make any money, or two, that it would really garner a big audience,
I talked to a guy, his name is Jason Abbott. He said, the best way to make money on a novel is to write 2 novels. The best way to make money on 2 novels is to write 3 novels. I mean, the important thing is you've done something that the majority of the people on the planet have not done, which is write a novel. Granted, they say 3,500 pieces of fiction are published every single day. But I got to tell you, at least 3,500 or 3,000 of those are complete and utter crap.
Well, yeah, and like
a couple, yeah.
I'm assuming. So I looked into. I actually have a buddy who works as a product manager for Amazon for the Kindle Direct publishing platform, and I talked to him. He was actually one of the groomsmen at my wedding, so I know pretty well.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, we were discussing this at one point, and he was telling me like, so here's what sells on Amazon, right? The among the ebook Kindle market, it's
dinosaur porn.
It's like it's softcore porn. Right, yeah. It's the erotica and the Harlequin romance and the pulp stuff. Right, there's that. There's like this the dumb like personal advice improvement stuff that like on the dude side it's like confidence and like tells and whatever, all that kind of crap. And for women it's like lifestyle stuff and like getting in touch with your soul or whatever, that sort of thing. That's really big. Mm-hmm. And then you have like the horror science fiction stuff that everyone likes to write, but a lot, and that does sell. But it's like a far distant, category to those other ones. And occasionally like those things do blow up, and
but it takes like my thinking is it takes a community. It takes outside of Amazon. You have to push them to Amazon. Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, you have to build that stuff up and say, "Hey, look, guys, I have this thing," and you have to dump them onto your Amazon landing page, kind of. In a way.
Well, it's a whole marketing pinwheel, right? I mean, the more eyeballs you get, the more conversions you get looking at your book, and then word of mouth. But everyone knows how that works now. It's all marketing, right? And so there is, in that kind of way, there is still a place for traditional publishers, probably. And this is not a market I know super well, but like. Once you do this, I was telling them the other day, like more than 100 people now like downloaded my book in the last couple of days, which is awesome. Like way more than I ever thought, right? But like, here's the thing, I don't know.
Is that just off of Reddit? Is that just saying, "Hey, look at my novel," or did you do something
I don't know where they come from, right? Because like you get these clicks. My wife shared it on Facebook. I'm sure that like.
Oh yeah, probably.
Right?
Is she big on Facebook?
She's pretty big, but like not big, but she's like normal person big, but like, but the thing, like, we have no idea where any of those clicks come from, right? And so that's part of the.
That's fascinating. I mean, you have a good cover too. I took a look at it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily speak of a gigantic magnetic planetary body coming towards. It speaks more of like a comet coming towards a planet. That's why I thought the story was going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I looked at different cover art stuff. And
did you design the cover yourself, or did you pull like a royalty free? How would you come with the cover? Come up with the cover?
I Dreams Time, like stock photo, bought it for $5. Yeah.
Oh, you bought the
Um,
cover? Okay.
Yeah, I bought that, and then like the fonts and everything are just done with like Kindle's like a built-in cover maker. So you would
Oh,
literally
interesting.
upload a picture, like the graphic, and then there's all these layouts and fonts you can put on there. So it cost me next to nothing to do the cover. And I thought
Well,
about
I've
doing.
heard that
Yeah, go ahead.
I've heard the best thing to do is build up your sales before the book even comes out, like pre-sales and stuff. And then when the book actually releases, that'll push you in the sales ranks too. I mean, I have no clue. I have no clue about marketing at all. I
Yeah, no,
publish my
I think it probably makes a lot of sense. Like it probably makes better sense if you are an established author already, right? So
that's irony though. I mean, what's an established author? How do you get there? Like
yeah,
catch
no,
22 or whatever.
yeah, I know. If you're like one of these people who's like, like if you're not a full-time writer, then like, pretty close to it. And like, you're in like the Sci-Fi Writers Association
Guild.
and yeah, all that sort of, and like, if you can do that sort of, that's great. But like, who's going to like pre-order my book?
Who's gonna pre-order my book? Yeah, exactly. I don't even know.
Yeah, but like, so this is the thing. Like, I think that it feels like if you want to make a living as a writer, you have to do a lot more. Like, Amazon's just like the product, but like the product is also your
The shelf. The shelf. Yeah, exactly. That's where you
yeah,
go to look for the thing. But if you don't know exactly, I mean, like I said, 3,500 new books are being published every single day.
yeah,
You're buried before the day is out, basically. And if nobody knows what they're looking for, you're done. I mean, I
yeah.
have what, like a
I think
1,000 followers on Twitter, and they aren't even looking for my publication. So
yeah, but I think that like there are there's a way to do it. You have to basically build an audience. You have to build like just get eyeball. You can run ads and that sort of stuff. I've occasionally see like ebook ads and stuff like that, but it's this is something I think Amazon and everyone is like trying to figure this out. Like, how do you get your thing in front of a billion people on the internet, in front of eyeballs? And the only answer anyone's come up with is like you buy ads for it, which maybe that is the right answer, and it could be because there is good. I think there's just a ton of great content on the Kindle store. But people just don't read that much, right? Like some of us do. Some of us read a lot of stuff, but like
some of us read a lot. Like I read a lot. You read a lot. I mean, people who read. People who grew up reading are gonna always look for a book.
I tried at one
Like
point,
my wife.
I tried publishing each part on Medium
As a serial.
for a while. Yeah, yeah. So I put like for like like 10 weeks. I put a new part up on Medium every week, every Saturday, Sunday, or something like that, just to see if anyone read it. And like a couple dozen people did, but it didn't really go anywhere because Medium is still a very immature platform.
You know who my model is? Do you know who Andy Weir is?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, dude, he's my hero. Are you on Reddit at all?
I have been in the past.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, I found you on Reddit. What am I talking about? Are you on Reddit? You're barely on Reddit right now, right? Unless that was like a throwaway.
No, I don't really do Reddit, but I went on there to like look at like the writing subreddit. So
Okay. Well, if you do full-time invest yourself in Reddit, I highly recommend it. It's a great website. I mean, there's some horrible parts to it, obviously. There's horrible parts to everything. But there's a guy, Andy Weir. You'll find this story constantly mentioned. It's called The Egg. Have you ever read The Egg?
I just Googled it.
It is the best short story. It's like maybe 800 words. It's been translated into like 25 languages. Not sure why the guy wrote it, but it's been basically how he birthed himself as a professional writer. Developed himself he developed his audience based on that one story, and then he wrote The Martian, chapter by chapter, publishing it on his website. He would publish it, his audience would make comments, he would adjust his story, and then what happened? He made a movie, he published a book, people know his name, he's able to write the next novel, which is this moon hard science fiction novel. And he never had to oversell himself. He never had to, tweet over and over again, I've got this novel on Amazon. He never had to like market himself. He wrote good fiction. He was an actual writer. He didn't have to beg agents to represent him. He never had to do 1, 2, 3 or the other thing. He just had to write a good story. That's all he had to do, is be a good writer.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that like that does exist. I think that there are some people. There are a couple of writers I follow on Twitter who are really pretty amazing. So like
Who?
uh, I'm gonna butcher her name, I think, but uh, Jamieson,
Oh no.
the fifth season.
I'll write the fifth season then. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, so the fifth season, it's just she's pretty big.
Is that fantasy or is it hard?
It's like sci-fi fantasy. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
a
love
little,
that stuff too.
little bit of both. Like the
Like
Obelisk
Star Wars.
Gate, the Stone Sky. Like she's awesome.
What
And
would you consider your novel? Are you science based or are you more fantasy based?
this is a good question, and I think people who are really like purists in these areas will probably like take me to task for it. I consider mine more speculative fiction than science.
Well, the umbrella is speculative, but you would fall someplace underneath that.
I mean, so look, so there are some people who think
Sorry,
that, like,
I'm a purist.
I mean, there are people who think that like if your story involves other planets or space, then you're science fiction, right? And
Well, you're
I
science
dispute
fiction,
that.
100%. You're science fiction. You can't take that away from yourself. You're science fiction. But then, if your story is based on science, if you cannot take the science out because it crumbles, you're hard science fiction. If your science isn't really based on science, like you've got ray guns, but you know what, you don't really have any science backing up your ray guns, then
Yeah.
you're fantasy.
Okay. No, I think that makes
Your
sense.
science is part of like a. What do you think?
Well, yeah,
Or
no.
does it?
So that's a good point. So I did do some research for the book just to make sure things kind of make sense. I think that and I actually have a buddy of mine who's a physics professor, and I talked him through a couple of points of it. He's like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, it's not impossible. I think that so one reason why it's called the second transit is because this body does two transits throughout into the solar system and then out into deep space and comes back. And a 2,000-year orbital period would be a little harder to do, but a 1,000-year orbital period can totally be done. Like there are things in the
Why does that make a difference? 1,000 years.
Well, so first of all, you have the concept of years, right? Like what is a year?
Oh, okay. A
But
year is what? Actually, the orbit of the sun, right? So
yeah.
I mean,
Well, second of all, so like there are things in the Kuiper belt right now, like that we know about, like basically planetoids or small, Kuiper belt objects that have orbital periods like 1,000, 1,500 years, and there's likely many more out there we haven't found.
and you're basing a year on us, right? I mean, 1,500 years is our 1,500 years, not their 1,500. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I sort of adjusted the timing in this book so that like everything kind of happens with their years are probably shorter than our years. So like one of the characters is like 140 years old and he's still like walking and talking to people and whatever. But the other thing is that the whole premise of the book is that this object has entered the system at a 90-degree angle to the elliptical orbit, to the ecliptic. So which means that like it's at it's in this weird orbit and it passes through the inner system and then out into space. So to do that, it's kind of harder to do that from what I could tell when you have a really long orbit. And I'm sure there are going to be people, if anyone like who knows stuff about this really took it to task, there might be reasons why that would be hard to do, just like with how gravity works or whatever. But
what if you had like a gigantic gas planet out there? Like
so,
a 3 times Jupiter.
Yeah.
And then you had like a big sun, and then you had your habitable Goldilocks zone with your planet, and that big like planet X was like in between those two.
So I thought about something
kind of inhabited,
like having like a dual sun system or something like that.
Yeah, kind of, but the gas planet never actually fissionized or whatever you want to call the word. So it's still like a Jupiter, but it still had that gravity, that magnetized field that pulls the planet.
I thought about trying to do something like that. So the one issue was that first of all, there's a huge kind of the big device that the book employs is that this object enters the system and it just happens to come really close to the planet. It doesn't hit the planet, but it comes really, really close to it. And that's
like every 1,500 years or so.
Yeah, that's an incredible like coincidence, right? That's pretty amazing. If that were to happen, plus like there was either another heavy object out in the system, or there was another gas giant within the system, like like Jupiter is to us, that basically protects the inner system, right? Because it attracts all the other objects out of like the inner system.
Poor dinosaurs.
Lol. I felt like that would just be like stacking coincidences on top of each other. I didn't feel like they really served a plot purpose. So there's all this, like, there are a whole bunch of points that I wanted to put in the book. The whole bunch of like kind of side, I don't want to say side plots, but basically like side factoids about this world that I had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote about a whole bunch of them. And then I realized, well, you know what? Like, those are kind of interesting to me, but do they really advance like the plot or the conflict of the novel all that much? I decided that no, they probably didn't, and so I took them out. And
did you decide that, or did like a reader decide that?
I did, and it took some like deciding which of my children I loved most.
Yeah.
Like,
that's Faulkner right there. He said you got to kill your babies, and you killed some babies. So
yeah,
I understand
like
that.
I took a I tell you, when I was in high school, I actually did creative writing. I attended a camp at the University of Virginia that was the creative writing workshop, and it was a really a very formative experience for me. But one of the things I learned there was, when you're writing fiction, there are no sacred cows. You gotta, the thing that writers hate to do and find hardest to do is put themselves in the seat of their reader and understand your prose the way a reader understands your prose. And if a thing you think is really interesting, but it doesn't advance a plot, it doesn't advance a conflict, then you got to kill it. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. So what's next for you, man? What are you going to do? You've already written a novel.
Yeah,
that's awesome. What are you going to work on next?
Well, so like I said, I had a couple of other goals for the year. The product management book I wrote with my friend Ben, that's done now. It's basically, I mean, it's written, but like there are still a couple of areas we might want to tighten up or whatever. But it's basically written. We're still trying to. O'Reilly's is going to decide if they want to publish it or not.
And published. Oh, they're still deciding.
Well, yeah, they're basically still deciding.
Wow, man, are you impressed with that? I mean, it doesn't sound like you are. No, like, are you blasé just because you were impressed and you're just whatever? Or because, I mean, I'm like sitting here going, I'm talking to a guy with a science fiction novel, and he's also written a technical journal too. I mean, you're basically a Renaissance man, in my opinion. It's like pretty cool.
I think it's cool, but I get why other people don't think it's cool. Like, I think software product management for enterprise software, I think it's kind of fun, but I get why other people don't. And also, it's not nearly as long. It's like 30,000 words. It's like,
still pretty impressive, bro.
So it's still not nearly as long, and it's like, that might we're not gonna like give that away to people for free. We're gonna make people pay for that, right? And that's
you're gonna make corporations pay for it, though.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna wring them dry.
Right? I mean, that's a moneymaker right there. That's like that's your second novel. That's like a year off to write. What's your novel called again? I'm so sorry, it's slipped my mind.
The Second Transit.
That's the third transit right there. That's a year off to write the third transit, so your wife can go back to work and you can be a stay-at-home dad.
Seriously. I tell you, one of the guys I idolize, there are these two guys who I really, really respect. And one of them is named Mike Duncan, and the other one is named Patrick Wyman. And both of these dudes are like PhD level historians who have basically like gotten off the rat race, dude, and they do podcasts and they write books. So
wow.
So check out like the Revolutions podcast. You can Google that. They have a site. The Fall of Rome podcast by Patrick Wyman. He also, by the way, is a.
Wait, I've listened to that one. You know that guy?
I only talked to him on Twitter. I'd never actually met him.
Oh, okay.
But that's
like, a really good podcast, actually. I love that one. First
of all, it's an extraordinary podcast. Second of all, dude is also an MMA commentator. Like talk about the most interesting man in the world, right? I want to be that dude's friend.
Let me ask you, man, is it going to be McGregor, or is it going to be what's the guy's name?
The other guy.
The other guy.
Meriwether, right?
Yeah. Who's going to win that fight? The 40-year-old and the 28-year-old guy.
McGregor, but
I don't. Why is a 40-year-old man fighting a 28-year-old? I mean, does he really honestly think he's got a shot, or am I delusional in thinking he does have a shot?
I mean, when you get to that level, you probably have a shot. Even that guy, I mean.
I don't know. I was watching a fight. I was in a restaurant watching, I think it was like maybe one of those horrible daytime MMA Ultimate Fighter shows, and there was two dudes, maybe they're heavyweights. They were going at each other. They were so slow and lumbering, and I was thinking to myself, is this what McGregor's going to be looking like when he fights maybe Mayweather? So if that's the case, Mayweather's got a shot. He's going to stay out of his reach the entire fight. He's never going to lay a hand on him. It's going to be embarrassing.
This is the thing that
But-
I've never been able to explain to like my wife, like why. I'm not a big sports guy. I don't really watch sports ball that much, but I love watching two grown
Sports
men
ball.
beat the shit out of each other.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. You know what it is? That one guy who took a knee to the head and cracked his skull. Since then, I can't watch MMA. I just can't do it.
Yeah, no, it gets a little tricky. Well, like boxing, I love watching boxing. I
love watching boxing too, because you don't see people die usually in boxing anymore.
Well, yeah.
The Pacquiao Mayweather fight, people called it boring, and I just watched these two tacticians just circling each other for the entire fight. I loved it. I thought it was
look, generations of humans have watched people beat the shit out of each other, and we are not very different. And that's one of the things I kind of wanted to like explore with this book was that you never really read books about like cavemen, right? But like, look, cavemen were emotionally complex people, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the first chapter of my book, it opens with this a hominid, basically a group of hunter-gatherers who don't yet have language. And I've always thought about that because it's hard to write about that because like they don't have language. So what do they do? But like people then were smart. People then had like feelings, and they had.
Oh man, I hate arguing with my guests, but dude, even bees have language. Even dogs have language.
They don't have language, but like hominids are not like bees, right? Like there were conflicts, there were passions, there was strategy. Like they were smart people. Like they just didn't have the words to explain themselves in the way that we do, and they're
still going to communicate though, just not as in depthly.
Yeah. And so all the people in the first chapter of my book, they all communicate. And they all because you can totally do that. They can't do it the same way we do. So anyway, so I wrote that other thing. I'm focusing on now. We're T-minus 8 weeks until our due date.
Baby time.
Yeah. So we're kind of focused on that for a little while. I do have another story idea, and I'm trying to be very like reticent about jumping into it because I'm trying to think of is this a good use of my time? Because again, I'm so chewing on it in my brain, thinking I would love to write this story. I think the story sounds really cool, but would other people be into this story? And
well, obviously you're successful in terms of writing. I mean, you've already proven that you are a writer. As somebody who tells the entire world that he is a writer also, I will just give you one last piece of advice, even though you don't need it. or
I'd love to hear
obviously, it. Obviously, you don't need my advice at all. But honestly, I think you could use this when you wake up in the morning. Find yourself an opportunity to write at a minimum a word count, a small one, 200 words, 100 words, 50 words. I try to aim for minimum 350 words a day. It's a small amount. It's a page. You know what I mean? At the end of the year, you've written a novel. You've finished a novel. If you just aim for a small amount of words every single day. If you have a project, add a small amount of words to it. I mean, if you have this thing you want to write, just put some words on it.
So what do you do? What do you do when you sit down for your 350 word goal and there's just nothing coming from the tap?
Make it happen.
Just put it down anyway.
Edit. I mean, if you've written something the day before, look at those 350 words that you have the day before and edit 350 words into it.
Huh. Okay.
I mean, just work on something that you've worked on previously. Start. Open up Google Images, find a picture, and tell yourself what happened in that picture. 250 words. It doesn't have to be the same story. Make a new story up. Challenge yourself to write something fresh. Look on, Reddit is a fantastic place for writers.
Huh.
There are prompts all over the place for writers. And basically the goal is to be the best writer you could possibly be. And the best way to become the best writer you could possibly be is to write as much as you possibly can. And as somebody who's finished 2 books, maybe this is naive for me to even give you advice, but the goal is to write as many novels as you possibly can.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
That's it. I mean,
And you're already like one novel up over everybody. So
I sort of feel I feel like what some people say like they have to write, like they just feel compelled to write.
nobody ever. I mean, yes, you want to write because something's in your soul, but most mornings you wake up and say, "I'd rather eat a dozen donuts and go back to bed." If everybody did what they wanted to do, the world would be filled with actually, this country's filled with obese people. So maybe everybody's doing what they want to do, but you have to force yourself sometimes, and
You
forcing
gotta have
yourself at a
ambition.
minimum, yeah, make it a mission. Exactly. And when you make it a mission, you don't ever really do the minimum because you end up doing 1,000 words anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's a good
So
point. I might take that to heart.
I think if you've done it once, you could do it again. 90,000 words is nothing to snuff at. And I mean, are you having a boy or a girl? Do you know?
We're having a little girl. I put a little dedication to her in the book.
Oh my God, dude, I'm so sorry. I have a son and I have a daughter, and I've never been in love with anything more than I do my little girl.
Oh yeah.
I fell hard. And I hear that that's the way it is until much later on, and she's gonna break my heart.
Oh yeah. Well, I have a little sister, so I have no idea. Like, I always tell my wife, like, the big advantage of having a son would be like, I kind of get it, right? Like, a little boy. I was a little boy once. I get it.
Yeah.
Like, and I can get inside his head. And my
He
issue
kicks my butt every single day.
And
that's
my
all he
issue with
does.
little
He wakes up
girl,
in the
like,
morning and kicks my butt.
the little girl, like I just don't even. Writing from a female perspective, writing a female character is the same kind of way. Like I don't get it. I don't. And like I try to write. There's a bunch of actually, like, one of the main female, not really a protagonist for the book, but like one of the central figures of the book is female, and like writing for her was hard because I didn't really have the perspective. So I gave it a shot, but I don't know. We'll see if it sticks.
Yeah, I don't know if it helped or not. I mean, I do write a little bit more in female characters because I want my daughter to win, so I want the female characters to win a little bit more. I don't know if it helped or not. I'm writing a female character right now that I gave my daughter's nickname to.
Cool.
I'm being yelled at to change it, so I might have to change it, but we'll see. Still really addicted to short fiction. Oh man, so we're working on that hour. Was there anything that we should have covered that we didn't cover?
I don't know, man. I mean, I if anyone has like I said, like I am a true amateur. So I'm always looking for like
you're a professional, dude.
Good way to like. Well, I'm a professional, just not a professional writer. I'll tell you when anyone buys a book. Yeah. But I'm always looking for like.
You know what I want?
Sorry, go ahead.
You know what I wanted to ask you that I forgot to? Where'd you serve your Peace Corps time at?
I was a health and water sanitation volunteer in Cameroon, which is a Central African country just southeast of Nigeria.
Okay, how'd that go? Talk about that.
Oh man, it was cool. It was highs and lows. It was good times, bad, but it was you're gonna have that in like any extended amount of time anywhere. And it was a life-changing experience. I mean, I had no particular. I had no idea where Cameroon was until I was assigned.
I didn't know either it was in Africa because I just embarrassed myself and said it was in Asia.
It's like those countries like Guyana, right? Or like you're like, where the hell is it? So you have to look it up. I looked it up on Google Maps, and now like it's a real place, and like it's full of completely normal people, and it really opens your eyes to how like badly Americans or Westerners generally misunderstand Africa as a place to be feared.
No, I do. I'm afraid of it. Are you afraid of Africa still, or do you understand it a little better? Oh my God, guys, come on! My kids are now crazy.
There you go.
How do you feel about
it's great. Go ahead.
Should I go to Cameroon?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's perfectly safe, perfectly nice place. Great people, great, very warm, very welcoming. I mean, there's places you should avoid, just like there are places in states I would advise you avoid, and there's all that kind of. Like, you shouldn't go to Sudan. I actually
no, yeah, I've heard. I had a theater professor who went there to teach English, and he left immediately.
Oh, so after Peace Corps, I actually worked in international development for a couple of years, and I actually spent quite a bit of time in southern Sudan as well.
And, oh, really?
And I would not recommend.
But it's the northern Sudan. It's the northern Sudan. That's bad, right?
I never went to Khartoum because that place is especially when I was there, they were bordering on war with each other. So I never got there. Southern Sudan, also not a place I'd recommend you go, but like I think that we get fed. I had no great curiosity about Africa before I went there, and not because I had anything against it, just because like I think like a lot of Americans, I just didn't know anything about it. So like it was this sort of like thing I just wasn't all like curious about. And now it's like a thing I know something about, and like it's perfectly normal in a way that I don't think it is to a lot of folks. So like, I think Americans and Westerners generally have a tendency to visit other Western countries. And now I tell you, like my wife and I were just in the Netherlands like a few weeks ago. And like, Europe is fine.
I love the Netherlands.
It's great. Yeah, no, I love it. But like, it's just not as interesting to me anymore. Like most of Europe feels like it's just another Western country. It's a little different. There's some different languages, some different food, whatever. But like it's once you live in a non-Western culture for a while, like it's really not the same.
You know what it is for me? I have a great curiosity about the world. I'm one of those dudes that get on Google Maps and just explores. I hit the street. I try to get as close as I possibly can and just kind of explore until the map runs out.
Yeah.
I'm very nervous about having and going where they don't have. And I don't know whether I'd be able to defend myself in places like that.
Oh yeah, I feel like people get really tripped up over like this whole like almost like a guilt thing. Like I'm a wealthy American and they're not. And
well, I'm not even a wealthy American, and I just don't know if I want to bring my family into a situation like that.
But just by virtue of being American,
I'm not young.
We're all like wealthy in ways that like we don't even think about really.
Water, food. I mean,
well, yeah, just opportunity, right? The citizenship, right? I mean, it gives you a lot. But like that isn't a thing that like we think of Africa as like one big poor wasteland in a lot of ways, and it's not like it's as varied and diverse a place as any, probably more so than the US. But like Cameroon is fantastic. I'd recommend you go there. I mean, go to Senegal, heck, go to South Africa, go to go to Benin.
No, my children have discovered my toothpaste and my toothbrushes.
Oh man!
I mean, I guess life could be a lot worse than this, but they have they've been brushing their teeth. I thought they were watching.
Well, inculcated at a young age.
Yes, but they have covered themselves in toothpaste, and I did not notice it until just now. So I now am giving them up for adoption. So if you want, and if anybody knows of anybody who wants any 2-year-olds, they're available.
Yeah, pay for college.
All right, man. Exactly. Oh man, that is so cool. I thought about it when I was in college. I really did want to do the Peace Corps very badly. I did the Army instead.
Well, I tell you, go to Togo, go to Benin, go to Senegal, go to Cameroon. It's a nice vacation, beautiful beaches, great people, good foods. You'd have a good time.
I'm afraid of sharks.
You same with North Carolina. Then there's a whole shark infestation right now.
Is it really? What's a shark infestation mean? Somebody got attacked, or they're just out there?
Oh yeah, no. There are always great white sharks in North Carolina on the Outer Banks. To be fair.
Oh really? Great whites.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
When I was a kid, my mom owned a canoe, and we would take the canoe out into the Gulf, and we'd go fishing. We'd go snorkeling on the reefs. We'd camp on this little island about a mile outside of Pithicothi River. And it was great fun. We had so much fun in this canoe. It was a wonderful experience. And then when I was an adult, I read an article in the newspaper about these shark nurseries, where they used to lay their eggs or whatever.
Yeah.
And ever since, hammerhead sharks or whatever was out there, ever since then, I've just been freaked out about the water. It was just, I had a great childhood enjoying the Gulf of Mexico. And ever since, knowing what was underneath me lurking with all their little sharp teeth has just made me unable to enjoy the beaches.
Yeah, I know just what you mean.
So where do we go to check out the free option to read your novel right now?
Yeah, so I think so today is Friday the 14th. I think the free promotion ends on Sunday.
Sunday.
If I'm not the 16th. I could be wrong about that, but I think it ends on Sunday, and so you can get it until then for free. After that, it's like some nominal amount. It's like an ebook price on Amazon.
$2.99.
So you can do it. Yeah.
Do you have a paperback available, or is that going to be later on down the road?
We'll see. We'll see if anyone wants to read it. If they want to read it in paperback, I'll like ask Amazon to print up in paperback, but probably not. If for now, it's just ebooks.
Now, you consider this a first draft? Are you going to do another edit on this, or are you done with this novel?
I consider it a pretty solid first edition, and
first edition. Okay.
Yeah, and if again, like, look, if thousands of people were to read the book, and there was a reason for me to do a really solid like re-editing of the book, then I would totally consider doing that. Because I still think it's a really fascinating idea, and there's lots more that I have yet to say and I didn't put in the book, but. Like if 100 people read it and that's it, then there there's not a lot of reason for it. But we'll see. I think that this is a good first edition, though.
All right. Well, excellent, man. I really enjoyed talking with you. You're a very personal writer, and I wish you all the luck in the world. And if you have any more information about this novel, or if you want to come on and talk about your book for whatever reason, or you decide on you want to talk about writing or anything in the future, just give me a shout out. We'll get you on the podcast.
Hey, I really appreciate that, man. Cool.
Hours or whatever. Thank you, Blair.
Appreciate it, man.
And really enjoyed talking with you. All right, man. Bye-bye.
And that was Blair Reeves. Again, I really enjoyed meeting that guy. Next up is Chris Herron. He's got a great story. He's the creator of Tall Tales TV. It's a YouTube show where he has decided to read short fiction. He did what was yesterday, the 14th, he put out a short fiction piece of mine called One Gnome, Two Gnome, Three Gnome Gone. I enjoyed the story when I wrote it. I enjoy the story now more having heard him read it. He is a talented guy. He's got a great voice, and I highly recommend everybody work their way over to that YouTube channel just to check him out. So that'll be a great conversation. Check me out at BRYAIELLO. That's my Twitter handle. Everything that I do winds up there. But BrianAiello.com, that's where my fiction lands. That's where my podcast lands. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Bunches of great stuff coming up. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.